thrilled to show Doctor Strange. Who's seen it already? Yeah, second timers. It's a great film, and very, very proud to feature two of our alumni who worked on that on the film's visual effects, Jesse Flores and Paul Liaw. They'll be here a little bit later. But as you know, if you've been here for the other screenings, we like to show a short film before our feature. And we have a really brief film tonight that I really liked. It was submitted by one of our alums. And it's called End of the Line, Inwood. So anyone from Inwood? Anyone? All right, so it's all shot up there. It's a really cool film. I think you'll like it. I think it goes great before this. So before we show that, we're going to do a really brief Q&A with the film's co-director, Efraim Acevedo Klein. So Efraim, come on up. And we have a student moderator from the BFA Computer Art, Computer Animation, and Visual Effects program, Derek Forkel. So the two of you, come on up.
Thank you for coming and showing your film.
Sure, thanks. Yeah.
So I had a chance to see the film beforehand, and I wanted to know, like, what got you involved in this process, in this short film?
Well, I think anybody who graduates from film school is just trying to make something all the time. It's kind of hard to do when you're trying to, find work and all that stuff. But my co-director Keith is laying back in the cut. He had this idea for doing a series of films, or like a web series, or just a series of something where, no matter what it is, whatever kind of story it is, it takes place at the end of New York City subway lines. So like the end of the A train, the end of the G train. Like they're vastly different neighborhoods. You sort of have an excuse to do whatever you want. So I love the idea, and just wrote a script. It takes place in Inwood at the end of the A. And we just basically got everybody that we went to school with to who was available to come together, and shot it in 2 days. And yeah, it was great.
Well, that's awesome. Yeah. That's incredible. So it has a very unique filming style, which I really liked. What inspired you, like, from other films to kind of go that path?
I don't know. I mean, a lot of it was probably Corey Dross, who also went to SVA. He's in Paris right now, so he wanted to come. But shout out to Corey, up in a plane, I think. I'm trying to think of, like, if we had any distinct. Keith, do we have any specific look that we wanted to do? Yeah, we just wanted to look good. We knew we wanted to be memorably. We wanted to have, like, visuals that when it was done you would remember, and not just be like, oh, that was a nice short that they made. So hopefully the shots that are in there you'll remember randomly when you're walking around. Or maybe you'll see another movie and you're like, oh, those guys did that and they're short. So yeah, stuff like that. You'll see. You'll see it.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Now, what do we have to look for in the future? Are you working on any projects now?
Right now, well, I just moved to Canada, so mainly looking for just work up there. If anybody here knows any Canadian employers, please talk to me. So focusing on that right now, but we always want to do more. Maybe we'll do an end of the line, Toronto or something. They got a subway system, so and we'll just do more there. But yeah, we'd like to do more of these. That would be, look out for more of these if we can get our stuff together. And yeah.
Well, that's incredible. Thank you so much. I guess, what I thought about, like, so how was, like, your process? How did you handle, like, getting the actors and, like, really producing it all together? Because, like, how did you meet everyone, I guess?
Yeah, well, okay, so actually doing that was kind of like why we wrote the script, because the hardest thing to do, aside from just, like, having a creative inspiration to do anything, is, like, actually being able to do what you've written, because you can write whatever you want, and they're just like, oh, I don't have the means to, like, make anything explode or anything. So I was basically writing a script that I knew we could pull off, and we had actor friends in mind, essentially, as people we went to school with. So I actually went to SUNY Purchase for 2 years before I transferred to SVA. So we got some people from Purchase over there. My buddies Temmie and Pat are from Purchase. They're in the movie. Tiana, who went to SVA, she's in the movie. And, like, I hung out with these people and did projects with these people, and I just knew they had a screen presence. So, everything was just sort of right there when putting it on the page. It's like, they would be great on screen. Write them in. And you think about locations. You don't want to write like, no, they're gonna have to be here, and they're gonna have to be here, and they're gonna have to be here. You just sort of whittle it down to like, we can shoot in the subway really quick. Don't get a permit. We can shoot in this park. We had a friend who was in SAG that I knew wanted to be in it. I had never dealt with SAG before, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna have to deal with them sometime. Might as well be this short. So, all that stuff is kind of informing the writing. I don't know if I might be the only person who does this, or I think about logistics before I think about story. But I would recommend it. I think it's like a really useful tool to just be like, what do I think I can do, not what do I want to do. So yeah, that was kind of the process. It was like producer logistics, then creativity.
Oh, interesting. Okay, very cool. And then I guess, what was the most enjoyable part about this whole process for you personally?
That's interesting. I don't know. Keith, what was the best part? What did we had the most fun? Yeah, directing with my best buddy. That's I think he was pulling it off. I think that was just that feeling that like actually finishing it, like making these plans, because you make them like weeks and months in advance, and you're like, okay, hope this works, hope this works, hope this works. If this doesn't work, we can do this, and it's like, I don't know, it's like preparing this crazy strategy. I can only compare it to like preparing for war or something. Like you move the troops here, and you hope that works out. If it doesn't, you got more over here, and you sort of do that, and then suddenly like the things that you hoped wouldn't go wrong didn't, and then like next thing you know, you're sitting there with a movie, you're like, well, we did it, holy crap. Like, all the pieces fell into place. It's amazing. So I think there's that feeling of, like, your long, sweated over plans actually coming to fruition is just, like, indescribably satisfying. Yeah. And it's really nice this happening. Like, this is super cool. Yeah, this is special. So thank you.
Awesome.
And thank you, SVA, and thanks, Adam. And
Thank you for coming. Thank you again.
Sure. Yeah,
Thank you.
pleasure.
Thank you so
Thanks,
much.
man.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Point of information, another SVA alumnus who worked on this movie was the composer Michael Giacchino. He's done a lot of films, and he's the first non-John Williams composer to do a Star Wars movie. We hope to have him at one of our future after-school specials. But now I'm very pleased to present two of our alumni who worked on the visual effects for the film. BFA Computer Art, Computer Animation, and Visual Effects alumni Jesse Flores and Paul Liaw. Quickly, their bios. Jesse Flores is a native New Yorker who's been drawing and eating bagels since an early age, to most recently putting down the bagel temporarily for a gluten-free muffin and a tablet pen in San Francisco. He trained at the city's finest courses at the Met, Cooper Union, and Center for the Arts before SVA, and since graduating, he's worked in New York's premier post-production houses, pushing his abilities from the fast-paced commercial environment to the high standards of feature film work at Lucasfilm. You can find his work throughout blockbuster hits like Captain America: Civil War, Doctor Strange, and Transformers: The Last Knight. Paul Liaw is an acclaimed senior modeler currently at the Mill working on virtual and augmented reality modeling and concepting. The first alumnus from BFA Computer Art to work at Industrial Light and Magic, Paul was recently a senior creature modeler for the company sculpting dinosaurs for Jurassic World and making costumes for Doctor Strange. He has worked with over 40 companies in various fields, including commercials, TV, film, VR, 3D print, games, healthcare, and education, and his work has earned him numerous awards, including those from ZBrush, Visual Effects Society, and Cannes Lion. In his spare time, Paul coaches professionals and students on modeling techniques and career building and runs a life drawing and sculpting class.
So welcome, welcome. So as we know, you graduated SVA. How was your time at SVA when you spent the 4 years or so?
I can't. It's been amazing. It's been amazing at SVA. I think the most important thing I've learned is collaboration. I think that's probably the most important thing I can get out of SVA was just everyone was helping each other, and just you kind of learn all that, and then that kind of transfers over once you start working, because then everyone's always talking to each other and kind of helping each other out, and you get that kind of social network to kind of grow. And even that, like with talking to someone else, they'll help you along the way. I managed to get a great opportunity to work at Lucasfilm through SVA because they were looking for texture artists, and Jimmy just randomly dropped my name, and now I'm there. I've been there for 2 years now at Lucasfilm.
So when I was at SVA, and this is computer art, but I was there. I'm kind of old, so I was there. I started in the '90s, so it's a very different world back then. So it was kind of invaluable because you couldn't just look anything up on the internet. There was barely internet that was fast enough to look at all the stuff. There was we trained on VHSs of how to use our program. So what Jesse said about collaboration was extra true for us. It was like you had to figure out stuff in the trenches, and I would look up stuff, and I would just be like, hey, can we make it like this? And I would have to invent techniques, and that's actually been carried through our whole camaraderie of if you come up with something, you share it immediately, and you don't be like, oh well, I know the secret trick. I will always train other people, and then if you want to know it or not, I'll tell you anyway. So, and yeah, it's you have to be really inventive and just sort of attitude of innovation. Is definitely something that happened a lot, and I feel like that's what pushes our industry forward.
Awesome, awesome. Now, after those 4 years, you have to go on and find a job and look for a career, basically. How has your life been after SVA?
SVA does have a lot of alumni that are currently working in teaching, so they kind of keep an eye out, and they'll bring you along for internships, and so that's sort of what happened to me. One thing led to another. It's very much one thing led to another. I was working at Frame Store for 3 years, and that led to moving on to the next one and the next one, and so far, so forth. So it's been very fortunate.
Awesome.
So I don't know if you actually paid attention to my bio, but there was one little fact that just threw out there that I worked at 40 different companies, and they're mostly in New York. So that's a kind of a big number for, I guess, anybody, because 40, right? Is there even that many companies out there? So that's like the bulk of my journey is I never had a full-time job until a few months ago, but so I was a freelancer that was booked full-time from one job to another that through many years. So when I first graduated, this is it's actually kind of awesome, but it's not something that just comes to you. So when I first graduated, I was just into the art, but I had no sort of sense of the business side of being an artist. So freelancing is kind of great. You set your own rates. You set your own hours, and if you are good, you could sort of have as much work as you want. So it was just a matter of, you do have to learn how to network and sort of be in this system, and once you do that, you could sort of just jump from one house to another, build your reputation and all that stuff. And along the way, I like to sort of bring other people with me, and people in my from my school and people I worked with. I sort of it's just one of those like you sort of become a brand / currency yourself, and you sort of just go from company to company, and that's sort of been a great ride.
Awesome. So you touch on it a little bit, but what are some useful things you've taken from the School of Visual Arts into the field?
I'd say I think probably the biggest thing is you have to make sure you never stop learning. That'd probably be the biggest thing I can tell anyone. I still once you start feeling like you're a big fish, that's kind of when I start getting kind of worried. I was working here in the industry in New York for a lot, and then once I walked into ILM, that's when I went back down to a junior. That's how I felt. I was brand new person, and so that's at least at school, you always kind of want to learn, and it's always changing. The software's always changing. Your techniques everything's always changing. So you have to be happy with change. Change is good, I always say. So anything everything that's evolving, you kind of have to keep that open mind, and that's the biggest thing I came out of SVA, because at work, I'm still learning. There's definitely things I don't know. There's people there that are from all the way from ET. They're still there learning and still pushing hard. And you see someone at that caliber that's still like, oh, I just heard that this new program came out. I'm going to learn it. I'm like, man, you've been in the industry for 20 years, and you still kind of I need to learn this and I need to learn that. That's inspiring, man. As an artist, man, you can't get stuck. You got to keep going. You got to keep learning. So that's what I got out of it, man.
The continuous learning thing is it's a little bit more than an obsession. That's your whole daily life. I have a book on me here. I fill all my daily sort of in between times with. I sort of fidget myself into a better artist, by trying to draw on the subway and all that stuff. But it is one of those things. It's true. It's you have to. Well, you can't. I mean, if I were just to graduate with the stuff I knew when I was in school and use those skills now, I mean, those programs don't even exist anymore. It's like completely obsolete. So how do you keep going? You have to keep learning. I do realize that one thing I took away from SVA is I feel like a lot of the core strength of why I could do what I could do comes from my traditional art training. The drawing and the sculpting stuff is really directly tied to the traditional skills. So I would say you can learn the new program, but more importantly, I want to hire like a better artist, and they'll always come up with like a better solution, or just know what to fix to make it look better. So I guess keep training yourself to be a better artist. I mean, also learn the new software, but the two things. So there you go.
Cool. Awesome. Now, in the computer art field, there are many paths to go. For you guys, you have texturing and sculpting, and I'm sure you dabble in other things. What drove you to those specific professions?
For computer art?
Yes.
Well, I'll be a good example of someone who didn't even know. I didn't even have a computer coming into computer art, let alone I knew any programs. I didn't know Photoshop. I didn't know anything. I came in with a fine arts portfolio. I transferred from fine arts to computer art. I just came in with a bunch of oil paintings. Like, this is all I got. And they were like, yeah, sure, come in. And I thought it was just like they're trying to just fill a slot or something, you know what I'm saying? And no, but once you learn, it's just like what Paul said. You come from traditionals, and you'll get people from photography, you get illustrators, and you'll even get engineers. People who come from like a tech industry who come into this industry. Because there's just so much, it's just so diverse. But I specifically came from fine arts, and I didn't know anything. And it goes back to what Paul said. If you have that basis core, you know how to draw, you know how to paint, you at least have an eye. You're training, the software is the software. You just learn it. It's just tools. But it's what makes you different from everyone else is how you find a solution, how to make things look better. So that's how I came from fine arts. Yeah.
Cool. And then texturing, like.
Well, that goes back to So I again, because I came from painting and illustration, I really, really enjoyed the world of matte painting, which back in the day was painting on glass to make the backgrounds, set extensions for cinema. But when I came in was the digital realm. I changed to texturing because in New York City there wasn't a lot of matte painting work. I'll be honest with that. And I started again. Then I went into the more texturing, which is making something look photoreal, an asset, whether it be a character or just something like a car, And then I found that very interesting. Well, this goes back to when I was painting and illustrating, making sure it looks just as how I see in real life. And just as years going on, now that's what I stuck to. And now that's my job. I need to make sure that this building, this whatever, looks real, and that that goes way back to like high school, and so, yeah.
So when I graduate, I mean the SVA, the curriculum is like when I was around, and well, I guess it still does. It sort of trains you to be more of a generalist, but also like I chose modeling because that was my strongest, what I'm strongest at. So I mean, it sort of came really naturally. The other stuff I could sort of force myself to do, but then if you're forcing yourself to do something all day long, and you're not going to be doing it that well, and other people won't think you're doing it very well either, and you suffer. So I stopped billing myself as a generalist, and I just started dropping out the things that I didn't like to do, and I didn't do well. So modeling comes from the drawing. I mean, the way I drew was pretty analytical about structure, so it wasn't that different for me. So I was able to just port that into modeling, and especially now with ZBrush, you could sculpt pretty much as. I mean, now the gap between when I first started, it was a lot more different, like more abstract in terms of pushing points, then you sort of had to visualize what it might turn into eventually. But now it's really like the gap between your skill and what you can do is really narrowing. If you could draw it, you could sculpt it. It's sort of, you could turn it around. So it's very direct. So I feel like I was fortunate enough to follow through with it through the years, that I was able to sort of be put on these more senior projects with sculpting. So now it's just very natural for me to just focus on that.
Awesome, awesome. So now to get on the big topic, Doctor Strange. How was your experience working on this massive film?
Oof. Well, I went from commercials, which was something that you'll do a character in like a week, to a huge blockbuster where you'll have an asset for like a month. So two things with that is you can either and I was trained to be really fast, so I would block something out really quick, and then I'll have like 3 extra weeks, which I was like, well, let's take advantage of this time to actually really push yourself to the next level and really get down to the detail. So I found that really good, because now, before I never had time, now I have all the time in the world. So now I'm, there's no excuse. I have to be good. I have to really push it hard, and there's no excuse for me not to be good. There's also, Doctor Strange is a very interesting show, because there was not really much of a texture supervisor on the show, so it was a little bit of all over the place. So we'll have, as you saw in the New York scene, you have a lot of that, all these chunks all over the place. What we ended up doing was, just very much like get everything blocked, because there's so much stuff to do, and then we'll reanimate them, and then whatever gets in shot, that gets pushed up another level. So you had to make sure you prepare all your assets to be as flexible as it can, because you'll never know if that chunk that you did that looks pretty good as a first pass suddenly becomes hero, and then you got to make sure you can be able to high res that up as much as you can right away, because it needs to be put into shot, to be re-rendered, to be seen on dailies the next day, and then they'll decide whether or not it's working, or they'll be like, you know what, no, we'll do chunk C now, and then now that becomes hero. So it taught me to really push my skills really high, but then also really, really focus on my pipeline. Make sure that it's as flexible and as powerful as it can be when it comes to the time where, of course, what will happen is they'll be like, nope, you know what? We don't want this one anymore. We'll switch it to another one. And so that was I learned a lot.
So I will add to what Jesse said. If you notice that he talked about at any time switching it and then really designing your workflow, that is definitely like a advanced move. I feel like that's something that as you get to a certain stage, you have to sort of, your chess master a few steps forward to sort of. You don't know what's gonna happen, but you're sort of like in a stance where you could just strike back and sort of deflect a punch and all that stuff. Doctor Strange was my second movie, second tour of duty at ILM. The first time I was there for Jurassic World, it was sculpting dinosaurs. So it was what I knew with more time budget. So it was I knew how to sculpt dinosaurs, and like sculpting skin was my specialty. So everything was like what I knew, but to the best I could do it. Doctor Strange, completely different thing. They were like, we want to do these characters, but guess what? They're wearing 6 or 7 levels of baggy, flowy stuff. The traditional thing, what they did was like they did a 3D scan of the character. So if you 3D scan something, it turns it into like a statue. Like if you think about it like a stone statue of the blank thing. If you have one layer of clothing, that's great. Now that's the shape that we need, and I could just sort of remake that shape based off of the scan. But what if you have multiple layers and folds and all that stuff? So what happened was what I was given was basically a task that is not meant to be done by hand. Like you could do it, but it won't be that accurate. It'll sort of look accurate, but then if you change poses, flap it out, it's not going to be good. So there was recently a new program that came out that is made for the fashion industry to make clothes. So I was like, actually, why not use this new technology to aid my attempt at this, to help me out on certain pieces. And if I can't get it to work, I'll do it the traditional by hand method. So it was like a dog chasing, like a greyhound chasing a rabbit sort of thing. So as long as I didn't like fall behind too much, if this was faster, I'll do it the new way. So I kept with one piece after another. I would just kept refining and trying out this new software until I actually invented a way to make clothes for movies. Actually, I ended up teaching the team afterwards, like, hey, this is groundbreaking. I can make clothes. I can make wrinkles. I can unfold it, fold it, and then I actually have a tutorial on Nomen just on this topic because I was able to sort of innovate a new method for doing it. So that was the first one with Jurassic World. It was like me doing what I knew. This one was like inventing a new one. So this is kind of pretty great. So
I would say that also this movie actually launched both of our tutorials. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, and check out their tutorials if you have a chance. They're pretty awesome. I've checked them out personally, so.
Considering how the visual effects was a highlight of Doctor Strange, I have to ask, how did it go with planning out the scenes in the city where it gets all twisted and upside down? Did you guys thought this up with the other animators, or did the director told you that this is what he wants and that was that?
That sequence, the whole New York chunk scene, that's where I was working on, and I was there for every single meeting for that, and I'm telling you that every single day they changed everything. It was very much designing the shot every day. So like I said, the whole chunk thing. Well, there'll be like chunk B, C, H, and then they'll be like, I don't like this. Let's switch it to this one and that one. So it was like that to the last minute, constantly updating, constantly rendering, that kind of effect. So that's what that New York scene was, just a nightmare.
Hi, I have a question for Mr. Flores, right? That's your name? Okay.
Dr. Flores?
Dr. Flores.
Professor Flores.
What program do you use to paint in or texture? Like, is it proprietary software or like what's your main program?
It's very proprietary. It's called Mari.
Oh, really?
No, we use specifically Mari for this one. ILM is now in the process of developing a pipeline with Substance Painter. Ooh.
Very cool.
Yeah, but it was just Mari, and if I'm correct, we used Renderman for that.
yeah, ILM's all RenderMan.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. I have another question actually for you. When you're modeling, do you retopologize by hand everything? Is that also your job, or do other artists retopologize after you?
No, I retopo everything. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's
Okay. Thank you.
We have a question back here.
Yes, hi everybody. I thought that Doctor Strange was an excellent movie and it was well put together. So I was wondering whether or not, will there be a part 2 and what's the name of your next movie? God bless.
That's a Google question. It's
Yeah, I don't know. I think Marvel.
They don't tell us those things.
Yeah, Marvel kind of, I think, already put a list of the following ones.
I think they did.
Did they put
I'm
the
pretty
Doctor
sure they
Strange one?
did. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that last scene hinted towards it, so I'm like 99% sure.
Yeah, we usually just get you're on this show now.
It's actually funny. Like when we're working on it, sometimes we'll see like internet leaks, and then I'll be like, "Oh, that's what we're working on." I'm like, "Oh."
Yeah, I'll say one kind of hidden behind the scenes thing. If I don't know if everyone saw Rogue One or not, but when I was there while they were doing it, I had no idea about that ending, and and we found out that later on that the person who was like sculpting and designing Princess Leia, he was like hidden somewhere, like no one knew where the hell that guy was.
Oh, it's Marco DeLuca. He's freaking excellent. So look up his work. Marco DeLuca. He's
that's the guy.
Yeah, he sculpted both.
Yeah,
of those.
so like even if I'm for at Lucasfilm, you'll know all the other projects that are working on, but there's some that are just like hidden. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. So I'm not sure.
I was wondering, in regards to your individual styles, did you two happen to work on Inception by any chance? Because as you can see, in regards to the buildings, had a very similar style. Not to say that you're not unique. I was just wondering if you had any influence on Inception as well.
Inception, like the movie?
Correct, because based the way the buildings and backgrounds were made.
So I mean that sort of decision wouldn't fall on us, but I would say like it's like two orders of magnitude more complex, because Inception had one city block that went this way, and that's kind of it. And I mean, the angle is all cool like that, but it's like one city block in France like this. Like all of New York plus the subways, in the Rubik's Cube, that's not even. I mean, when I saw the previews for this, I'm like, no, what, no way. And that's what we saw. And eventually, I was like, when I saw that, you saw that in like gray shaded previs mode, and I was like, how are they gonna do that stuff? It's like I've never seen such a complicated previs. I'm like, that's some pretty insane stuff. So, yeah, it's definitely pushed the envelope in the next level.
Yeah, and that, like we said before, like that each shot was sort of it. Like the final one looked completely different from when we first prevised and blocked it. Again, every chunk was changed. I can't express that enough. Like this thing changed like every day, and it was pretty rough. Yeah.
Actually, I was looking at I actually have a little bit of trouble telling people which part I worked on, because actually not sure which one is real and which one is. And I know they replaced a lot of stuff, but I'm not sure when they did it, because when we did it, we saw them. I made the costumes, we did the turntables, they did the walk cycles. Eventually, it just looked like a person doing those things. So by the time I left and they completed the movie, I'm like, so which one is mine? Actually, I have no idea, unless, because it's Disney, they're stingy with their showing everything, because they don't have to. But but unless I see the render, the wireframe of anything, I actually don't know which one's mine. It's just that's kind of, I'm like, oh, good. I think that's cool.
Hey Jess, hey Paul, what's going on?
Hey.
That's all. Alumni. So, how long did it take you, or how long does it take you? This is for both of you, to knock out a hero asset.
Well, I guess that depends. One of the big hero ones was that big building that splits in half. So I textured that one. That one actually took like 2 months, only because, I mean, there was a lot of repeating stuff, but it really took that long because, again, they kept changing the angles on certain shots. So we had a rooftop shot that's not in the final, but it's in the trailer. So we had to like design like the rooftop, and so it's not like a 2 months that I'm like on it. It'll be like maybe a month I'm on it, and then I'll do something else, and then they'll get hey, we need to update this, and then I'll just switch back. But I think in total it was like 2.5 months, maybe. Yeah, because again, it just changes. And that shot where he slams and it starts bending and flowing. So I did my first pass, and it just wasn't enough once you get that close, because I'm texturing the whole building, and I'm kind of just trying to get as sharp detail as I can to get that breakup from that distance. But once we're that close, that breakup is not holding up. It needs another extra level, and so then you'll go back. They'll either cut that part, and you'll just texture that piece, or you got to reopen that huge asset and just focus on that area. So that's what makes it a long time. So then they'll change the shot, and then you'll have to figure out what's the best way, whether we're going to cut it or we're just going to go back in there in this extremely heavy scene and re-update. Or they'll get a new shot like a rooftop, and then suddenly we need to design the rooftop, and now I'm looking at rooftops for like another week.
So I'm looking, if I can add to what Jesse said. So if you guys ever did anything in 3D, if you realize, okay, I'm going to paint something, in his case, I'm going to paint something, and the detail is, I'm going to paint a character. But how big of a canvas do you need to paint a city? Like to have everything painted in a city. So, a building is humongous, and if every part of it is like, if you imagine all the detail in one face, just covers that hand area. It's like I'm going to paint everything in existence, pretty much. So it does take time. For character stuff, I would say, at ILM, a character asset is maybe like a month and a half development on the modeling side per hero thing. That would be for the dinosaurs. For these characters, because we had a scan, I would say maybe like, actually no, because we had to make the face, had to sculpt all those expressions. So it's less time, but spread over more people. So it's eventually it ends. Everything always ends up taking the whole time we have from the movie's like starting point to, when the movie comes out minus a couple days. And it takes as much time as you have money for. That's usually the answer. It doesn't matter what company, whatever. If you have more money, you spend more time, you make it better. And then if you have, and this is like he's talking about 2 months, and he's a top artist. Like it's not just like anybody's 2 months. It's like he could do regular stuff in like a day or two, and it'll look great already. And it's like 2 months of an expert working at his best pace for 2 months. So that's why it's. Looks good. So
yeah, you learn a lot about metal and glass. Like, there's quite a lot of breakup here. You're like, oh, this refraction needs that, and I'm like, really, I need to like put the handprint smudge on it. Yeah, we get to that level. You'll get like, I like texture oily hands on like things. What's that? No one sees that.
I just as a team, did you guys look at each other's works prior to it being like to the people that look at it to see if they're gonna cut it or go back and develop it? Like, did you guys consult with your team if it looked good before it went to that next stage?
Yeah, I'd say so.
We have reviews every day.
Yeah, we have reviews every day, and there's also like internal ones before we show to the client. Or before you even show it to the supervisor.
So it's like a ladder. Like how many? It's like can you beat one level before you go to the next? It's you gotta.
Yeah, but you do get into those situations where you'll run into like you'll show it to a supervisor and they'll be like, yeah, develop it a little bit more before we show it to the. You know what I mean? So they'll also kind of keep an eye out and be like, well, we can push it a little bit more because it could influence. Like if you did something like not that good, it'll influence that client's judgment.
Yeah, you don't want them to give you a dumb comment afterwards, like, oh, but why is this something? It's like if you resolve that, they're like, oh yeah, that's that. But if you don't, you want to sort of close the loopholes so they don't like start
picking at like random
rip open your case for stuff.
Why is the rust that color? Yeah.
Okay. So thank you for all the questions. Thank you, Jesse and Paul, for coming today. Your work is amazing, and we hope to see you in the future. So thank you again. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Yeah,
thanks for staying.